So whilst we wait for the remaining people to join on, I can give an introduction. So welcome to the Sintali Edge Network training. For those of you who have spoken to me, who have not spoken to me before, my name is Julia and I am on the commercial team at Sintali. We've got a lot to get through, but before we begin, I've enabled the chat box. So if you have questions, then please do write your questions into the chat box as well as the Q&A function as well. We will be recording the session and sending it out to all of you. So we will be sharing the slides and recording from this session today. And for those of you who may not have had any contact with us before, I thought I'd give an introduction to Sintali. Sintali is an environmental verification company, and we are one of the global certification providers of the EDGE Green Building Standard. We're based in the UK. EDGE certification makes up 80 to 90% of our operation, but we are also the owner and operator of a green infrastructure standard, Building with Nature, which is a UK-based standard as well. Our experience with EDGE, as I said, it makes up 80 to 90% of what we do as a company. Our team advised IFC on the development of EDGE in 2010 and has been a global certification partner to IFC since 2015. What we're going to be touching on today is a portfolio approach, and we developed this approach with IFC in 2018. In terms of our scale, we have issued over 260,000 EDGE certificates to date, equating to over 58 million square meters of floor area in over 90 countries. So we're really, really keen on EDGE, and we want to share some of our insights with you today. So what are our objectives? Our goal today is to understand what a portfolio actually is when it comes to EDGE certification, how clients can benefit from a portfolio approach, and how to use these benefits to upsell to clients. And then we will also be discussing the different types of approaches that you can take to assess portfolios within the EDGE app, and how this can save time and money for the EDGE client and increase sales for you. But first, let's start at the beginning. What is a portfolio project? When we talk about a portfolio project for EDGE, we typically say a bare minimum of 5 buildings, but really the typical size of portfolios tends to be around 40 buildings. The other key characteristic of portfolio projects is they are spread across multiple sites. So that tends to be the key difference between a big individual project versus a portfolio project. This matters because there is a certain size of portfolio project that makes it economically viable for us as EDGE Expert Auditor Certifier, as well as the client, to undergo green building certification in an effective manner. Portfolios can be existing buildings as well as a pipeline of new developments, and there are ways that we can make it effective for the customer, either as existing or as new buildings. So based on this assumption then, a portfolio is 5 buildings or more and spread across multiple sites. How many developers do you know with just a singular building? Most developers fit the category described as a portfolio client. So really, every time we are speaking to a client, we should consider them as a portfolio client. The key is showing them why they should certify at scale and why it benefits them to certify a portfolio. So that brings us into our next section. Why do clients opt for a portfolio approach? But also, why do they not? Before we ever touch EDGE and sales, it always has to come back to the basics. What do clients care about? And unfortunately, this isn't the environment. Every real estate client has specific needs. This could be increasing profits, attracting tenants, or accessing financing. These are all goals that make business sense to the client, and typically this won't necessarily link to sustainability. If you've been to any of the Edge Network webinars before, you'll recognize this slide, as I've pretty much used it in all of the webinars that we've executed so far, because it's so important. The key to all of our sales conversations, whether portfolio or standard projects, is to understand the client mindset and help them understand how Edge or how green buildings can help them in achieving their goals. So what is the link to Edge and the client's specific business needs? And it's a two-set approach, because we have to convince them, firstly, that green building makes sense, and secondly, certification. So you may get the question, okay, well, we're already installing solar and energy efficient glazing and, all of these energy efficiency measures. These are all part of our building designs. Why do we need to get a project certified? And the answer is simple. The business benefits don't really exist without certification. Certification is essential because it validates the claims of the client and it demonstrates compliance to stakeholders. So would you believe someone if they came to you and told you that they have the greenest building in the country? The certificate is a proof of the achievements and proof to stakeholders. So when we talk about green building leads to higher rents, higher valuations, financing, it's the certificate itself that provides assurance to clients' stakeholders. Now, we can explain the benefits of green building and the benefits of Edge certification, but the world is sort of full of excuses. And if you've had conversations with clients before, you might be familiar with the challenges offered by clients. So some typical arguments against certifying a portfolio has typically been, it's too expensive, it takes too long, not all buildings would meet the standard, we just want to do a pilot, our competitors aren't doing Edge, so why should we? And I encourage you to write in the chat box any sort of typical arguments that you've heard clients sort of raise for not certifying before. So we've all have heard of these arguments against certifying. Our job when speaking to clients is to address these, show how Edge and a portfolio approach can help overcome these barriers. So what makes Edge certification different is that it was designed with scale in mind, and there are specific benefits of Edge certification that make it suitable for certifying at scale. So we have to make clients understand why Edge is different to perhaps other standards in the market, or why Edge is different to their perception of green buildings, and how it can be used to certify buildings at scale. So to address some of these concerns or these typical arguments, such as green building is too expensive, well, actually, the cost of certifying Edge at scale can be between 50 to 70% lower cost per building for larger portfolios. Edge takes too long to certify, or green buildings take too long to certify. The time taken to certify with Edge can be a lot less than with other certification standards. So I've listed some examples here. 119 buildings in 13 months, 48 warehouses in 6 months, 250 buildings in 3 years. And I'll go through some of these case studies in more detail later on. But when a client comes to you with an argument about time savings, yes, Edge saves time to certify a portfolio, but show them how. Use specific examples. Clients can also save time through certifying its scale to reduce the time taken to collate collate documentation and save time on administration. There are certain efficiencies in the Edge app that reduces the effort for clients. And also the brand value for Edge is growing. So Edge is a World Bank brand, which increases its brand value, but also Edge has been adopted by some quite large and major brands all over the world, such as Decathlon, Hilton, Marriott, Ascot Hotels, Capitaland, Fibras in Mexico. So the brand value is at this stage twofold. It's links to IFC in the World Bank that adds brand value, but also the other players in the market that have already certified their portfolio, and it allows them to compete with these other brands through certifying at scale. And then the last point there, pretty much guaranteed that Edge is more cost effective and time effective to apply at scale versus other standards. There are also a couple of key benefits that play a huge role for why clients opt to certify a portfolio project. Clients that certify at a portfolio scale are more likely to access international green finance. There's elements of protecting the company's valuation by future-proofing the assets, so reducing the regulatory risks or climate-related risks. Portfolio clients can use Edge to reach their ESG commitments or CSR commitments. And again, thinking about that brand value, Edge portfolio clients can position themselves as market leaders compared to their competitors. It's also important to think about the Edge software itself. So the Edge app isn't just a certification standard, but it's a planning and reporting tool, making it easy to align certification with corporate ESG strategies, KPIs, and even net zero pathways. So when you're talking to clients initially, certification and the certificate is important, but what most clients may not understand is how you can use Edge with a planning approach to certify at scale. So how can it be used as a building design tool to help clients develop a strategy to certify at scale? And how Edge does this is you compare your building against the baseline, the evaluation. You can plan what measures to implement into your building in order to improve the environmental efficiency. You can use the KPI data within the Edge app to plan the associated costs. So what would the cost be in order to implement this project at scale? So it's again thinking about the app itself, how the data within the Edge app can be used to make it easier for clients to certify at scale. Another benefit of the Edge app is that KPI data that can be integrated into clients' CSR and ESG reports. So here is an example of corporate reporting. So here you can see data from the Edge app to show the tons of carbon savings per year across different typologies within this example portfolio. Even though not all of the projects here are certified, the data can give an accurate prediction of the carbon savings of the portfolio assets. So essentially, using that data on a portfolio level scale can be really good for a client's corporate reporting. And in a similar way, say you have a large scale client that has made a commitment to reach net zero. When you're having those conversations, make sure the client understands how using the Edge app can help them create a pathway towards net zero. So we're thinking about what is the goal for the client? Are there elements of ESG CSR reporting and how Edge can help them get there? So to summarize then, when we're having discussions, sales conversations with clients, what are the key things we need to focus on? Firstly, what is the company's strategy and how can green building certification help them reach their corporate targets? Then they need to understand the components of Edge that make it a suitable standard to work with. So whether that's saving time and money, whether that's using the Edge app to create a strategy. And then we need to think about scale. What are the benefits to them as a client for certifying at scale? So I've explored the why. Why should clients certify at scale? Now I want to focus on the how. So how can we assess portfolios in the Edge app? And what does this mean in terms of helping clients save time and money? And then also for you as an Edge expert, as an Edge auditor, to win the deal and secure that portfolio. Now, before we go into how to assess portfolio projects, I just want to align on some of the terminology that I will be using. So portfolio projects can largely be categorized into two types: portfolios with standard designs or portfolios with non-standard designs. So standard designs could be buildings that have similar design specifications, use the same building materials, and claim the same efficiency measures in the Edge app. Whereas non-standard designs would be different designs, different building materials, and different measures in the Edge app. It is important that when we are talking to clients, we have a clear understanding as to whether the buildings within a portfolio share standard or non-standard designs, as this will affect the approach that we can take to certify the project in the Edge app. That being said, there are two typical approaches to assessing a portfolio. The first is a volume or one-to-one approach. This is where, as an Edge expert, you would model each individual building on the Edge app. This would be reviewed by the auditor on an individual building level, and then by the certifier on that individual building or sub-project level. This is the typical approach we use for standard Edge projects for the majority of our projects. It can be used for standard and non-standard designs and applied to both new or existing building materials, buildings. On the flip side, where buildings are of a standard design, we can use a sampling approach. The sampling portfolio process can be used to certify multiple buildings of the same type and performance specifications. Using a sampling approach can be a more streamlined and economical choice than certifying buildings individually. With a sampling approach in Edge, it is a method of grouping similar buildings with standard designs into clusters. The auditor then selects a number of sample buildings from each cluster, and the audit is conducted only on these selected buildings. Once the sample buildings are certified in a standard way, the remaining non-sample buildings are certified by reference to the samples, optimizing auditing and certification time for all of these groups of buildings. That is essentially what the sampling approach does. So where buildings are of a standard design, it might be worth considering a sampling approach versus a volume approach. So with a volume approach, there are still benefits to the client. There will always be a cost reduction from Sintali's side for portfolio developments, whether that is for a volume or a portfolio or a sampling approach. If it allows, so this volume one-to-one approach allows clients to certify buildings even though building types might be different and each sub-project is certified independently. However, with that volume one-to-one approach, the level of effort required for you as an Edge expert is more, because you are required to collect each building's evidence on a building level. Whereas with the sampling approach, the cost for certification will be lower than a standard portfolio, as the time taken both to audit and to certify will be less, and the effort taken to collect documentation will be less, as the client does not need to provide evidence for each measure. Let's take a look at how this works in practice. I've spoken about standard designs and how you can apply that to cluster buildings for a sampling approach, but there are still some considerations we need to think about when clustering buildings. So there are some conditions that IFC have applied in order to take this sampling approach, and these can be found in Annex 5 of Part 1 of the user guide. So this includes the auditing period. So all audits within the sample need to take place within 12 months. Age of the building must be similar. So a cluster can either consist of recently constructed buildings, so ones that aren't older than 5 years, or exclusively older buildings. Buildings within a cluster need to share the same country to make sure that the construction codes are similar and a similar climate zone as well. And the building fabric technical performance specifications need to be similar. The system technical performance specification needs to be similar, and they need to be claiming the same edge efficiency measures. So essentially, buildings within a portfolio with the same specifications can be grouped into clusters. Within each cluster, a representative sample of buildings is selected by the auditor. This is referenced here by the green squares. The sample buildings are assessed in the EDGE application and are subjected to a full site visit, full audit by the EDGE auditor, and are reviewed as per the standard EDGE process. Once all sample buildings have been approved for certification, the certifier selects one of the sample buildings to be used by the client to create an assessment for the non-sample buildings. So the client creates the non-sample building assessment, updates them with site-specific information, and then those non-sample buildings are certified through reference of the sample buildings. So in EDGE, certifying through reference means that for most measures, documentation is only required for the sample building. Non-sample buildings can be certified by referring to documentation within the sample building, so minimal documentation is needed for each non-sample. Reflecting on that approach then, standard designs matter because if a sampling approach can be taken, you can aggregate multiple buildings into a cluster, apply the sampling approach, so the relative effort required to certify these assets is far less than if we took a building by building level approach. So I wanted to show a few examples of how we have utilized a sampling approach with existing clients. So WDP is a European warehouse operator. They looked at solutions to access green financing for their building portfolio in Romania and used EDGE to validate the building designs. So they had 48 buildings. They recognized 4 design concepts. Within that, they had 13 buildings that were sampled and 35 buildings that were certified through reference as a non-sample. So for this project, certification was completed within 6 months for all 48 buildings. And if you're working a lot on EDGE, you'll know that that is a short time to complete the certification process for that amount of buildings. In a similar way, we have been working with Lidl across Europe to certify all of their assets at scale. This is an example from Lidl in Greece, who wanted to certify 236 retail buildings. So within those 236 buildings, there was 13 design concepts. From that, 34 buildings were sampled. So 34 buildings had that site audit, were certified by our team, and the remaining 202 buildings were certified through reference using that non-sample approach. So with Lidl in Greece, certification was completed within 3 years for all buildings. So again, a large amount of buildings being certified in a relatively short period of time. And finally, We have been working with Decathlon for a number of years to certify their stores across the globe. We negotiate with them on a sort of yearly contract basis. In 2024, for example, they had 151 stores to be certified. They had a maximum of 80 samples and 71 non-samples, and they recognized 25 design concepts as well. So with Decathlon, over 100 stores were certified in less than 2 years, and we have a continued pipeline of 35 stores to be certified by the end of the year with us. So again, with this high number of buildings, where the designs are similar, it's a really time-effective way to get that certification for the client. So when should you use a sampling approach? So a sampling approach is best when the client has a large portfolio of buildings with standard designs and wants to certify a set number of specific time, a set number within a specific time frame, and to value efficiency. When you're talking to portfolio clients and introducing sampling to them, it's also really important to think, okay, does this approach actually make sense based on the client needs? So, you know, we can present the sampling method, but if it doesn't suit the client, if that's not what they want, then that's okay too. Who are ideal targets for sampling, for this sampling approach? So with sampling, it's faster certification, less documentation, and lower costs. That's why typically what we have seen is that retail and warehouse clients are the ideal targets for Edge using that sampling approach because they often use repeat designs. Now, I want to stop talking about sampling and I want to flip back to the non-standard designs. So whilst I've just discussed the sampling approach, how it can save cost and time for clients, there are still time and cost savings for all portfolios, whether they are standard or non-standard designs. And it's important that whatever portfolio client you're talking to, they understand what these time savings are. So firstly, the quality of the assessment increases when we work with one client team. As the client becomes more familiar with the Edge app, more familiar with working with you as the Edge expert, the time required to go through the self-assessment process decreases. Everyone becomes more familiar with the buildings, as well as the certification process, and so the time needed to deliver the project will still decrease. This also applies to documentation. Even if the buildings aren't the same, it's likely that the documentation will be pretty similar. So the time needed to find the documentation, approve the documentation, and then complete the Edge assessment will also decrease as well. And finally, there are time savings based on the fact that we are reducing the administration efforts across sales, invoicing, client setup, and communications by working with clients on multiple projects versus on one project versus working with a client with multiple clients on smaller projects. So all of those administration processes are going to be shorter as well for clients certifying at scale. Time savings are one of the key values that we can bring to clients with who are going for portfolios, and ultimately it benefits us all. So from our side, the efficiencies we need to find are reducing the amount of work we need to do and the cost to deliver it. This means it becomes more cost effective for the client and they can spend more time or more of their budget on doing the retrofit and doing more developments. And then as an Edge expert, saving time is great because you can secure those larger projects and deliver them more efficiently. Now, I've spoken about the approach to certification and those different ways to assess certification in the Edge app, I want to touch briefly on portfolio clients and green financing, because I think this is a really important thing to consider when talking to Edge clients, and also one of the key factors as to why clients decide to opt for portfolio certification. So looking at Sintali's projects, almost 40% of our portfolio clients have secured financing thanks to Edge. Green financing makes deals go faster. It changes the conversation to Edge isn't just an extra, or green building certification isn't just an extra, it's required. And typically, I think we know that if we are talking to a CFO or a head of financing, if the client is being asked by their head of finance or their CFO to do something, they will do it. The pressure applied by the CFO is always going to be more for clients. So all of our portfolio deals have been tied to financing in one way or another. So here are some of the key clients that have used Edge in order to access green financing. So starting in Europe, WDP, who I spoke about in the earlier slides, they secured a 205 million euro loan from IFC for the expansion and refurbishment of their buildings under the condition that the projects were Edge certified. They also secured a 150 million euro loan from EBRD as well. Lidl also accessed green financing from EBRD for their green buildings certification. And we've seen green financing replicated not just in Europe, but across the globe. So bringing in another example, Capitaland Ascot Trust partnered with IFC in 2022 to launch a sustainability-linked bond with a value of 119 million US dollars, with the criteria that all of the buildings have been certified. And you can see other examples on the screen here. So Casada Fund in South Africa, Acorn in Kenya, Indospace in India, or Imperial Homes in the Philippines. All of these major clients have secured financing due to Edge certification. So how does this help you? So when you're developing a sales strategy and having those conversations, do research into your local market and understand the financing landscape. Identify who the right prospects could be. One, could they benefit from a portfolio approach with Edge? And two, are there players within the financial landscape that could offer green finance products for them? When you're speaking to clients, showcase examples during your pitch. This is so effective. We have loads of case studies on our website that you can use. You can say to the clients, okay, you can get green financing with Edge. That conversation will be more valuable if the client sees examples of clients that have already done it. So what are the existing clients in your area? Have they used financing, and what was that? And then finally, get clients to ask their banks whether they offer green finance products for Edge. So use your clients to create demand for green financing linked to Edge certification. So to summarize, when we're speaking to portfolio clients, there are kind of three key aspects that you should focus your sales conversations on. Mentioning the data on the cost and time savings of certifying at scale rather than one by one. Clarity on how financing becomes more likely for portfolio projects instead of individual developers. And then again, these other benefits like promotional value or promotional value with Edge, or becoming an Edge champion. So these are kind of the things that we need to think about when we're speaking to our portfolio clients. So we do have quite a bit more time than anticipated, but we have come to the end of the slides. Before we move into any questions, I just want to remind you guys that this webinar is offered as part of our Edge Expert Network. So this is something that we launched at the beginning of the year. to provide more support for Edge experts. So whether that's accessing project leads, commercial training such as this one, CPD and training sessions, and as well working with us for competitive fees for clients. So if you have not already signed up to our Edge network, and you would like more trainings like the one today, please do so. But I think now we can pass over for any questions. So I don't know if any has been written in the chat box. Yeah, Jose, maybe if there's any that we can go through.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for assist here. Well, we don't have any questions so far. However, I would like to highlight that if any of you see that you have a sampling approach opportunity, please contact us so we can provide you with detailed information. Additionally, once you have signed a portfolio, a sampling portfolio, you will receive personalized training for this specific portfolio. Furthermore, we will also have general training session as CPD for auditors regarding sampling portfolios. So you have two options for portfolios. Julia already spoke about standard portfolios, that is a volume, is a scale that you have. It doesn't mean that this is not a good portfolio. This is still a good portfolio. You have some pros and cons that Julia explained. So if you have questions about that, if you have any opportunity or you have a potential client who has a portfolio, please contact us in the email. Perhaps you have that email, Julia, like sales@sintali.com, and they support you with that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we've discussed the different portfolio approaches today. The reason behind that is that's what you need to be thinking about when you're having those discussions with clients. What approach that you can use, whichever approach, there is still benefits for that, whether that's, and those benefits are how to assess a project in the Edge app, but also those things like green financing, reporting, brand value as well.
We have one question, Julia, from Covina. With portfolio certification, should all the projects registered under the portfolio be finished at the same time?
So, Jose, I don't know if you want to expand on this one more.
Yeah, sure. So when you have when we are speaking about portfolio approach or the sampling portfolio approach, you have 12 months according to the guidelines to finish the whole project. What you have to consider there is that you have samplings and non-samplings. So the samplings is the one that you are that the auditor is going to visit, is going to check everything. So first, you need to certify the sampling that you have in your cluster. And once the sampling is certified, you have the rollout for the whole non-samplings. So regarding your question that the portfolio should be finished at the same time, it's not. You have to follow this process. First sampling and then non-sampling. If we are speaking about portfolios for a standard approach, they don't need to finish at the same time. It depends on the process of the certification process that you have. So perhaps you have a portfolio for 2 years, or you have a framework agreement, a portfolio agreement. So you have options. We have the flexibility to discuss approach regarding the needs that you have in case you have portfolios, whether if it is a standard or sampling.
Great, thank you. I've had another question about slides. The slides and the video will be shared via email. I've put on Friday because that's probably when I will send them out. And I will also share this QR code if you would like to send, if you would like to sign up to the Edge network. I guess if we don't have any other questions, we can leave it there. But I would ask you when when you leave the webinar, a feedback form will come up, and we really recommend that you fill that out. You guys are working with clients on Edge every day, and we really want to provide valuable training sessions that you can benefit from. So please do fill that out so we can develop more content for you guys as well. I think if there's no other questions, thank you, Jose, for supporting me on this. I will be sending out all of the information, and thank you all for your time today.
Sorry, Julia, before finishing, I'd like to add something else. If you want to know more about this portfolio, sampling portfolio, please let us know. So we build in a specific material. Sometimes it tends to be really technical. So if you want this technical content, please let us know, and we prepare that for you.
Brilliant. Well, yes, thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day, and yes, thanks for listening.